Constance just messaged me.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Terry Chavez Pedrosa, and I am on the team for Social Media Week Miami, which is a conference coming up next week at Miami-Dade's Wolfson campus. Today, I have some of my panelists in a very interesting panel, which deals with the topic of how social media is disrupting journalism. And that particular panel is going to appear during Social Media Week on Tuesday, September 23rd at 4 p.m. So we hope you join us. But we'll start the conversation tonight. So let me introduce you to my panelists. First we have, you can't see her, but you'll hear her. We have Daily Business Review legal reporter Julie Kay. We have Channel 5 West Palm Beach multimedia journalist, and that's already kind of the Times, you know, the title in itself, Juan Diaz Granados. And then from NBC 6, Channel 6 here locally, we have social media producer Brandon Launards. And did I say that correctly?
Yep, perfect.
Oh, thank you. And we expect any minute for Constance Jones, who is our morning anchor in Channel 10 here, to be joining us as well. How's everybody doing?
Doing great. We're good.
Fantastic.
Great. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So there's a lot to say in this topic, and we only have half an hour, so let's start the conversation. My first question, and feel free to jump in as you see fit, is how did you cover news generally before social media? Julie?
Well, all right, I'll start because I'm probably the dinosaur here, having 25 years as a journalist. Having worked for print papers like the Miami Herald and the Palm Beach Post, and anyway, I still cover it basically the same way because I've been doing this beat here, covering the legal industry in Florida for about 12 years. You know, I still get tips. That's how I cover it. I have sources, you know, well-developed sources and tips, and I go to events and conferences and read a lot of you know, lawsuits and that sort of thing. So I have gotten tips from Facebook. I have about 1,200 lawyer friends on Facebook. I comb through Facebook and I've gotten some tips, and we got a huge verdict and this and that, and I post all my stories on Twitter and Facebook, and sometimes get, you know, reaction and add to the story. Use LinkedIn a bit. So I think it has helped me. I enjoy it. I'm also very cautious with social media, though, to not, people in our industry have lost their jobs and they've gotten sued, and so I'm very, very cautious about never posting any of my own opinions. So I'll leave it to you guys to add to that.
Well, I can kind of speak, you know, for like a millennial. You know, I remember growing up, and at dinner time, everybody would sit around and watch the 6 o'clock news. You know, that was the thing to do. And, you know, now these days, you know, it's funny because I always ask people, hey, you know, did you watch my story, or, you know, did you see what was on the Today Show this morning? And a lot of folks, they say no. You know, when they wake up in the morning 10, 15 years ago, everybody turned on Good Morning America or the Today Show. Now people pick up their phones. That's the first thing they do when people wake up. You know, my age and, you know, older or younger. You know, everybody picks up their phone and they scroll through Facebook, they scroll through Twitter, and that's how they find out their news. You know, I mean, perfect example. A couple of weeks ago, I found out Maya Angelou had passed away by picking up my phone that morning, going on Instagram and seeing everyone put rest in peace, and I was like, oh no, what happened? So it's definitely changing. You know, I don't have 25 years. You know, I'm not even 25 years old. So, you know, I can't really relate to Julie.
Hey,
but,
Drew.
But, you know, it is.
Oh, good. Don't rub it in.
But, you know, it is different because I remember, you know, like I said, everyone used to gather around the dinner table and watch the 6 o'clock news every night, and it's just not the same anymore.
Besides the way you're gathering news, so does that mean now you have to find a different angle? If everybody already knows because, you know, they found out on Twitter that Maya Angelou passed away, what does that do to your story?
It makes news faster. You know, news becomes, you know, happens so fast, and then it just disappears. You know, it kind of just erodes away. You know, like I said, using an example of Maya Angelou. maybe 10 or 15 years ago, that would have been a top story at 6 o'clock that night, the top story at noon. I think these days, my station, we covered it at noon, and it just got a quick mention at 6 o'clock that night, and we didn't even mention it at 10, 11 o'clock that night, because social media, things happen so fast now with social media. So you have to stay on top of it because things come and go.
Okay. Constance, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, sorry I had some computer issues.
No
Sorry
problem.
about that.
Thank you, thank you. We just started the conversation. We're actually, and our viewers know that you were going to join us, so good to see you. We were actually talking about how journalism used to be covered before social media and how it is covered after social media. And we haven't heard from you or Brandon, so please add whatever you have to say.
Well, I can say I wasn't always a TV reporter. I started in the business roughly 14 years ago. I worked for newspaper. And so there was no social media. I mean, social media was drinks after, your shift. There really wasn't a way to share information besides word of mouth or, for a reporter, you always wanted to have a solid Rolodex, and that's where you would get your sources and you would connect with people and you hope the right people were talking about your story. I remember during sweeps period, my TV station would pay for advertising in the local newspaper. So obviously things have changed drastically. So it's interesting now, of course, social media is what we use for everything. As soon as a story happens, it's on Twitter. It's not like how it was maybe even 5 or 3 years ago. We don't hold on to the stories for the 5 and 6 o'clock newscasts. It's on social media as soon as it happens. So it's the local TV news markets that are having to kind of reinvent the wheel when it comes to telling stories.
Brandon, what do you find?
Yeah, I agree with what Juan was saying about social media and Constance. I mean, just breaking news. I think social media is the home of it. Even our mobile apps. Mobile is the home. Push alerts. We don't hold stories. We have breaking news. We have our reporters tweet it out instantly. There's no more holding it for the competition. We got to get it out there. We got to make sure you're right. Get it out quickly. Make sure it's accurate. We're also focusing on getting a story up quickly. I know we want to tweet it out, but maybe write up a few sentences, get that story, get that link, because at the end of the day, we want to be on social media, but we also want to drive traffic to our website. So one thing like we push is getting the story up quickly, as fast as we can, but also being accurate. So I mean, social media is just very important because college students, no one's like Juan was saying, sitting down on the computer sitting down in the living room watching TV. People are on their phones or on their computer and they're on social media. Like I tell my friends, "Oh, did you see the news?" They're like, "The news? I don't watch that. I just go on Twitter. I see the news on there." Or they're like, "Oh, we'll just get the news through an app." So it's interesting to see how the younger demographic is just leaning straight to mobile, and they're not sitting down watching TV. So it's interesting to see where it's going to take off.
And can I add something really quick
Absolutely.
to that?
Yes.
Not social media is part of it, but maybe it's my audience because our audience is the very elite, the lawyers and the bankers and the and the real estate developers, and they're not as savvy with social media. But I agree with Brandon in terms of like all print reporters now have to do a quick web story, 100 words. The minute we find something out, we got to turn it 10 minutes, whatever. And then our web editor sends out a news alert, a breaking news alert. And we have a list. All of our readers and subscribers get that. So they might see that on their phone, but they're not as into the Facebook and the Twitter. There are some exceptions. There's some lawyers or your Roy Blacks and but it is the immediacy. But sometimes for us, it's the immediacy of our news alerts and throwing it up on the website quickly, and then we have several different newsletter alerts during the day and reports and that sort of thing.
Let me ask you this question. Juan, you mentioned that stories nowadays with social media, come and go fast. Is that as far as maybe putting it on live TV, for example, because something has been talked about throughout the day so much, you won't give it any anymore at the 6 o'clock or 10, 11 o'clock hour, but could we say that that's not quite true on social media? Are the stories lingering longer on social media?
I think it depends on the story. If you take, for example, what TMZ did with, the whole Ray Rice situation, they blasted it on social media, and it did linger, throughout the day. People were interested in the video and so forth. But it's then you have on the flip side, President Obama may make a speech at 1 o'clock, and at 4, 5, or 6 o'clock, it may get a quick mention because it's almost considered old news, because you can find out what he said online, on YouTube, on Yahoo News, on the local TV station websites. So it does depend on what the story is, but some stories last longer than others, and it's because of social media.
So my next question is, what are the pros and cons of social media? But let me ask you specifically, because you have this additional platform to get your news out that people are so in tune to, is one of the pros of social media now that you can cover more? If you don't have to devote any time to a particular story because it's on social at 10 o'clock, and you now make space for something that you couldn't have otherwise covered? Or feel free to address any of the pros and cons, with regards to social media in the newsroom nowadays.
Well, I don't just put anything on social media that is not a story. I don't just put, I don't know about the rest of you reporters, but we're under so much pressure, like everyone, to produce. We kind of have this unofficial one story a day quota, but I don't just put something news on social media and not have a story to go with it. I don't know if anyone else there does, but.
Well, I'm the total opposite, and it's I think it depends on who you're trying to reach. I recently wrote a blog. I don't know if you follow Pew Research study, but roughly 28% of people ages, let me look it up, it's 18 to 30, don't watch the news. They don't connect to news like they used to. And so we have to find a way on where they are. And so that may be a teaser picture. It may be Videolicious. That's another way that we try to promote our stories. It's a pro because we are reaching a younger audience. We're reaching a broader audience besides just the people who may be tuned into this market. I did a story about this it's a very niche story about a little girl in Miami who has a cupcake business, and she's made thousands of dollars. And I put it on Twitter like 5 times.
I saw it.
And, well, it went viral. It was crazy. Today's Show picked it up. People magazine picked it up. They were interviewed by a South African newspaper. It was in Tokyo. And that was because of 5 tweets from Miami from my little story. So I will say that the audience is a little different because people can now search for the things they're interested in. They're more niche marketing. Where my stuff, I know the business journal is a little different because people are really focused, hyper-focused on that. But for like general news, what I do, the 4, 5, and 6 o'clock, it's been a buffet of news. But now social media allows the audience members to search for specific things they want, which is a good and bad thing. But for me, depending on the story I'm telling, it can go out much, much further and last much longer online than it would.
No, but what I was saying was, but you did do a story on that also, right? You weren't just you're not just going to tweet out, oh, I learned about this cup. You have a story that goes with every tweet.
I don't always have a link. I know my social media manager told me, yes, every time you tweet out something, there should be a story, but sometimes I'm tweeting out just trying to engage my audience. I'll tweet out a picture of a dog. Mm-hmm. And so those are things that may not sound journalistic, but it's definitely kind of a guerrilla way of marketing for myself. And some people would be against it, but for me, I'm just taking cues from some of the other people who have grown their audience, other journalists, and I try to show another side of my personality besides the news reporter.
I've thought about, I've heard that's a good thing to do. I just haven't, I haven't done that. I retweet stories, other journalist stories that I think are important. I'm very into women's issues, so I'll retweet a lot of those stories. But everyone has said what you're doing is the right way, and I'm so pressed for time and all that. But I'd like to try to do that as well. But I think there could be a danger to that, though. I was saying earlier, I try to really keep my personal life separate. I have 2 Facebook accounts, and there's very few people who have made it to both. One is my personal life and my cat pictures and all, and then one is strictly 1,300 lawyers and my stories and legal issues. I don't know if you guys have 2 Facebooks and Twitters. Do either of you have 2, or?
I used to. It's just too hard to manage.
I know.
What else are you using? So you talked about, and and pardon me for interrupting, but let me just throw the question out there, and you can take it. What social? You talked about blogging, Constance, and I know you are a blogger. What platforms are you using, and how are you using them?
I mean, I use YouTube, I use Pinterest, I use everything because I just want, if it's a story I'm doing, I want it out there. And so for me, it was a conflict when I first really started getting on social media about including maybe my personal life. And some people will not include their kids, not include their husbands, not include the fact that they went to the barber shop. But for me, I feel like it's allowed me to grow my presence online tremendously when they see that I am connected to Miami. When I take a picture out at Art Walk, they're like, wow, I was out there this weekend. When I'm eating dinner at the same place you've eaten dinner. Because when they see me on TV, they see this news anchor and this journalist and this girl who's in, you know, I've got that. I feel like I've got that down. But the hardest thing is how do I really grab someone to go to me, then go to the next Twitter feed? Right. What makes my feed the most interesting? So I schedule my tweets. I go to bed in another hour. So I do tweet all night, but Hootsuite is absolutely free. So I'll schedule my blog post updates. I'll schedule my local 10 news story. I mean, I schedule my stuff because I don't have the time either. I can schedule my Facebook updates. The only thing I can't schedule is Instagram, but that's, you know, I don't know if it's necessary. YouTube, I mean, my station gives us promotional videos to put on our YouTube channels. That's helped me. So it's a lot to do, but I'm trying to remain competitive because I see the next round of 20-year-olds coming to my station getting my job. And I'm not 20. I've been in this business for 14 years. So I want to be able to be competitive.
You're recognizing that they're in that space and you're going to that space to draw them.
I'm going to where they are, yes.
Okay. And Brandon, let me ask you, you know, not only how you're using it, because I know Constance is a brand, which we all should be in our different professions, and she's working that very well. I want to know not only how you're doing it personally, but I want to know how the station is doing it. Are we seeing other journalists and the station as the station work social media completely? Like, are they on Pinterest the way Constance is on Pinterest, for example?
Our journalists and our reporters and anchors, our station and overall, their main focus is Twitter, because Twitter is just a news platform. So we're very heavy on Twitter, and whenever they have a report or we have a lower third, you know, I think we're the first station in the market to put our Twitter handles in the lower thirds, and now I see almost every station does it. So it's just showing how Twitter is growing. We're trying to get all of our anchors and reporters to post more on Facebook, because believe it or not, our demographic in our market, a lot of Hispanics are on Facebook more than Twitter. So like Constance was saying, we're trying to get our anchors and reporters not just to post their new stuff on Facebook, but like stuff that they do on their own time. Like you don't have to post maybe a picture of your kids, but maybe what you're doing on the weekend. Or a good example is our main anchor, Jackie Nespro. She was good on Twitter, and I said, hey Jackie, we want to start leaning towards Facebook because Facebook's good in our market and it's a good way to reach out to the community, and you have a big fan base. And at first, when we approached her, she said, oh, that's one more thing to do. And that's why I feel a lot of reporters think it's one more thing, one more job task. But when I started showing her how to use it, and when she started seeing the engagement that viewers were giving her, and just positive things, and she loved it, and now it's just natural. She'll be on vacation and she'll be in the mountains in Colorado or something, or skiing, and she'll post a family photo, and now she loves it, and she's basically, we call her the queen of Facebook in our newsroom because she has a huge fan base, and whatever she does is a success, and now she just loves Facebook. So I'm trying to do that to all of our anchors and reporters, and some of them have the struggle of, like, some just don't feel comfortable with posting personal stuff, but my goal is to get them, for it to become natural to them, not just one more thing to do. So and then personally, I just for my Twitter fan base, I just try to post content that I think people that follow me like. So if I post stuff and I see people aren't responding or aren't clicking, then I'll change what I post. I try to be personal with people. I try to put breaking news. I have followers. I have friends, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I'll be like, oh, did you see the news? They'll be like, I'll be like, oh, follow this account. They'll be like, no, I just follow you. You post all the important stuff. I'm like, no. I'm like, you have to follow at NBC6 or this account. So it's trying to balancing both is a struggle, but you learn as you go. is the way I see it. It's
Right.
every day social media is changing, and the people and our followers, we're getting, I see different kind of audiences on Twitter now than I did maybe a year ago. So I see more and more people testing out different things. I think some people are getting tired of Facebook and are leaning towards Instagram. A big question is, how is Instagram going to help news? You can't post a link in there, so I think it's just engagement. I think Instagram's very engaging, the photos, and I think Instagram's going to be the next huge thing. So.
Well, what we do over at Channel 5, with Instagram is, a lot of our reporters and anchors and so forth, if we're working on a story, we'll post, a tease, coming up, see where, all this trash is going here, see how some local students are helping out the homeless, my story coming up at 6. So, it is harder. Instagram is a little bit more younger, it's definitely more of a maybe 25, 30 and under. But it's a different way of reaching out to them. Yeah, it is. You can't put the links down, but you can kind of tease your story. We've been doing that, and you can kind of tell your stories a little bit more visually.
Yeah.
I will say with and I had friends who were working in St. Louis. I mean, during Ferguson, Instagram was the fastest way to get those videos, and I think Instagram was far more. I mean, Facebook, I don't know if they, and this is a different story for another day. On Facebook, I barely saw anything about Ferguson. Instagram, my timeline was filled with videos, pictures. Twitter was on fire too, but on Instagram, I could see the visuals immediately. Where, Twitter's a little bit more word-based. Instagram, there are these compelling images, the videos, and for me, I think Instagram took on a whole new meaning with Ferguson. Because we were seeing in real time, like as soon as that video was taken, we saw it immediately. And I don't know if there is anything else that's that quick in sharing video.
Are any of you using SoundCloud when you need a longer conversation that Instagram allows, but you're off air? Is that a tool?
No, we would post, if it's something extended or an interview, we'd post it on our website and then link it out on social. We wouldn't use a third party. We'd rather have the clicks to our site. Because we have that capability of posting a longer video or an interview. So in our benefit, we post on our website because we want that traffic.
One thing that I heard Constance touch on this. I'm not sure if NBC6 is doing this as well, but there's this new app on our phone called Videolicious, and it's an app where literally you can take your phone and they're encouraging reporters to do this, and you can literally make a news package. Put together a news story that will air on TV. Make it 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes long. Shoot all the shots. I mean, it's easy. You can create it in 5 minutes, and it's just one of the tools that helps us out in the field. Where instead of waiting for us to tell the story at 6 o'clock, we could tell it at 2 o'clock when we're working on it.
Do you have any examples? Maybe that'd be good during our panel. Maybe if you can show some of those.
We are required to do. Now, I'm not in the field, but I will say I'm looking on my website now. Every reporter has to have a Videolicious updated for the day. So, and it's with the Apple technology, and it takes, like you said, like 10 minutes to put together a mini 30-second tracked teaser package, whatever, nicely put together. I don't know how much it's catching on, but we do it. We've been advised to do it. If we don't, we get in trouble. But we definitely have some from Local 10 to share. I don't know if you guys are doing, I mean, you guys are big on Instagram. You're NBC6, you guys dominate with your Twitter and Instagram. So, but Videolicious, it takes a little, I mean, it's hard to, we upload it to our Local 10, our main website, and then we tweet out the link from Local 10 so we get the traffic to our site. Don't know if that's the most effective way when you're just trying to get it out there as fast as possible. But I have several I can share.
Fantastic, and definitely, this is a short conversation. We'll go more in depth into all these issues during our panel at Social Media Week. Let me ask you this: so we look at young people and we think they know everything, and I can't tell you how many times I actually have this conversation with people where I'm like, they know how to play. But you need somebody that knows strategy and needs to know how to use this with purpose to handle your account. So this is my question. Let's assume that young people know the technology and know the different platforms, but you guys have the experience of the industry. So if you were to give someone starting out, a young person, some advice about what they should train in or what tools they need to get into your careers, to become journalists today, what would you say?
They need to be on social media, definitely. I mean, you can't be a journalist and not be on social media. And I think 10 or 15 years ago, if you wanted to be a journalist, you had to buy newspapers, you had to buy your own camera and work, kind of work on your craft. Now you can easily do everything on your phone. I can record my voice, I can read a script and practice on my voice and diction. And just staying in the news. I mean, news is all over. You can follow AP, breaking news, and NBC News, and you'll be good to go. You'll know, everything that's happening throughout the day. So just being in the know and, using the tools, right at our expense.
I think one important thing is engaging with other journalists in the market before you want to get in the industry. That's one thing that helped me get my foot in the door. Engaging, chatting with people, following each other, replying, retweeting. I feel like you create that connection with people, with other journalists, and I think that'll help you in the market. You also have to be careful what you post. Maybe in college, you may not think that's important now, but when you're applying for a job in a year, you never know what they can look back and see. So I feel like you have to, while in college, if you really want to be a journalist, you have to start acting as a journalist. And even though you may not be having a full-time job yet at a news station, but pretend that you are. Tweet news out. You don't have to be working for NBC6 or WPLG to be tweeting out their stories or starting conversations with people. I think that's very important starting off, because that looks good when you're applying for a job. You say, oh, they have a fan base, or they're tweeting out news, or they know what they're doing. So I feel like that's one thing important for people starting out. That's my advice.
And I think Constance, one of the things that I heard as you were addressing other issues is definitely branding. As you share information, you simultaneously brand.
Yes, I think, and you're absolutely right. I'm impressed with the interns who come into our station. I'm like, wow, they make me really want to get my stuff together, because for me, unfortunately, in the newsroom, we don't really get trained on how to blog or put a website together, or making sure that you're putting your face in the story to add to your credibility. I mean, those are things I have to learn on my own self to build up who I am as a journalist. But one thing I would encourage, in addition to, social media is so essential. Like, there's no excuse, because when I joined Twitter, I didn't have it on my cell phone like people have nowadays, But blogging, I think, the voice of the journalist is no longer the 45-year-old middle-aged guy down the street. The journalist is anyone who has a perspective and is an eyewitness to something. So I think the world of who's telling the stories is changing drastically. So you want to be on that wave on, who's the leader in communication. I mean, when I watch Fox Network News or CNN, or even Good Morning America, the last few people they've hired on Good Morning America aren't the best news journalists. It's the people who have perspective, branding, who are clear about what their image is and what they stand for. Generally speaking, if you look through who's being hired and whose voices are being heard, it's the ones who are creating that voice. And I think through blogging, through Instagram, through Twitter, all this stuff that's free, there's really no excuse for the students to not be doing that. And that's what I think makes your voice more, not to say you have to be super powerful, but you don't want to get lost in the Twitter feed. Everyone's tweeting out information. Every station in Miami, every newspaper, every radio station has the same story. How do I make sure they're looking at what I have to say about the story? And even though I might be 18 or 25 or 32, I'm just as valid as the 65-year-old down the street. And I think for young journalists, they can't be intimidated by the older. For me, I felt before when I was, when I started up in the business, and I'm sure we're all relatively young. I think we're all in the same age bracket.
I'm not, but I was okay.
Yeah.
When Brandon said he's 22, we're not in the same age bracket.
Okay, I'm not 22
I'm just going to stay quiet.
Okay, I'm in my 30s. Okay, I'm sorry. But I'm just saying, how do I get people to connect with me versus someone else? And so social media is a free way to do that, and an easy way.
Julie, what do you think?
All right, I'll give the final, I'll be kind of the contrarian here a little bit. I do like social media. I'm actually known probably in the print world as, I'm friends with so many people in the print world, having worked at the Herald and the Post, but I actually like it. I'm on Facebook a lot. I've got my TwitPic. I've got my links to I post photos all the time. I also do a monthly restaurant review here called Power Lunch. So I take my own food photos, and I love. It's kind of a habit, but I'm just going to say that aside from all that, let's not forget the bottom line is good journalism, and I have to say that was my passion, to be an investigative reporter and to tell the truth and to expose all this. So unless you have that basis and that underlying, basis, that let's not forget that's the main thing that we're all here for. And then of course we have to get it out in this world, but that's what drives me is waking up in the morning and finding great stories and that people are going to talk about. And anyway, sorry if I'm the voice of the dinosaur here, but
no, that's good. But let me ask you this: in your job officially, Constance, I know what the answer is going to be as far as your blog is concerned. But are you finding, is this happening, yes or no, that your producers, the people at the station, are asking you to get more into the story? For example, whereas before the rules of journalism were very clear, you're objective, the story's not about you. I know at least in the blogging world, I'm wondering if it's spilling into traditional news. There's a search for more of the first person in the story, more of the opinion, more of the perspective. Are you seeing that or not yet? I mean, you're still pretty much keeping it middle of the road.
Well, I think it depends. I think it depends on the story. So for example, I did a story about skin bleaching. There's a lot of illegal bleaching cream in South Florida. It's a big thing in South America and the Caribbean American cultures where people of darker skin will bleach their skin. And often we may think of Michael Jackson, right? But it's a very big phenomenon. And it was something growing up that was very common to me. So how do I put that in so people can relate to that? So I often try to find stories where I can put my own personal experience in it so people know that I'm credible. But when it's the news of the day or I'm reporting stats or I live in Miami, I'm telling, it's hard, but I try to find my voice in every story that I tell. I try very, very hard. Yeah.
So one last question then. Let's take a general look and go from the newsroom and the particular stories to the business of news. And there were a few things that, I hope we didn't lose her. There were a couple of things that have come out during this conversation. One of them being a niche audience. The other one being how mobile phones are a competition. Where do you see the business of news 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line? What changes do you anticipate?
I'll answer this one. I honestly think I think news, everything is going to be integrated in mobile. I think everything's going to be a lot more on demand. I feel like, people are not sitting down watching 30 or an hour newscasts, especially the younger demographics. So I feel like in maybe 10 years or 5 years, what we're doing, where people are going to go through their app or, maybe they're going to go through their app and they're going to choose the stories they want to see and they're going to watch. And I feel like maybe advertisements will be through the app and the business will be shifted a little bit differently. I think there's always gonna be a morning show, whether in traffic, but I feel like it's gonna be a lot more. Maybe it's gonna be a lot more video integrated. Maybe on Twitter, when you click a link, it's gonna go to maybe the station's app. It's just crazy what technology is gonna be able to do. But I feel like everything's gonna be a lot tablets and iPhones and web-based. That's just my personal thoughts. I don't know if anyone else agrees or disagrees.
And do you think print will still exist? I hope.
What was that?
Do you think print journalism will still exist and I'll have a job in 10 years?
I think it will. I think it's going to live online. Obviously,
yeah.
Newspaper is a thing of the past. But I think believe it or not, newspapers on Twitter have the most followers than local stations. Just in general, newspapers have a bigger following and they have better in-depth stories than maybe a local station would handle something. So I think there's still going to be that audience for newspaper organizations, and people are going to be reading those stories through their phone or through the app. It's just a matter of whether it's free or not, because I know some newspapers charge. Why am I going to pay for this newspaper service and I can just Google that same story and find it somewhere else? So it's
right.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Yes, and that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because I have literally stopped following certain newspapers and certainly do not retweet and don't bother even going into the link because I know that they're the kind of newspapers that as soon as I do that, are going to ask for my subscription credentials, and you know.
The Miami
So-
Herald started doing it. I mean, I was on the Miami Herald yesterday, and they started locking up some of their stories. And the Sun Sentinel, Palm Beach Post, you can't go anywhere in the Palm Beach Post. So a lot of newspapers, you know, that's the only way they can survive, by locking up their sites.
Yeah, we've had a paywall. We're one of the only ones we've had. We've had one always, and we're just lucky that we have a very loyal, elite audience that can pay for it. But yeah, it's kind of scary.
Constance, you missed the question. The question was, we had during our discussion, we had talked about a few things. We had identified how news is going more niche. We had identified how mobile is giving traditional journalism some competition. And then my question was, 10, 20 years down the road, what do you foresee, if anything, as a change, as a difference to the business of journalism as opposed to the way you're covering stories day to day?
Well, I don't think there's going to be an evening newscast 4, 5, 6, and 11.
Yep.
I think the idea of like I call it buffet news. The way we're doing news now for local TV news is just not going to fly. Brandon's 100% correct in the idea. I think there's still going to be like a morning news aspect, like something to wake up to get started through the day. But I think that our audience, they are so selective on, or like you said, niche, will be choosing what they want to see. I mean, I never would think that Netflix would be as popular as it is today. And because of Netflix, our 11 p.m. newscast is suffering drastically. People aren't staying up to watch. They select the times in which they view their program. They may do it an entire weekend. They may decide to do it, little pieces at a time. So for local news, I think people are still going to want the content. It's just the way it's going to be presented will be differently. And I think it will be obviously mobile. It'll be on my cell phone. It'll be on, maybe my iWatch or whatever it is. It's going to be
glasses. Your Google Glasses.
And it's not going to be the news of the day as we know it. I mean, there's still this responsibility that all news industries should have, and reporting all the political corruption and the house fires and the murders. But I might just want to learn about the craft fair down the street and my real estate news, and that's what Twitter is essentially. I follow the things I want to follow. I create my own specialized list. Google Plus, I have these lists that I follow, and that's it. So I think I may not have a job in the traditional sense of me being a reporter in the field reporting live, because right now we're live. It's just live is so relative to how it was before. Instagram is making things live. So it's exciting. It's a little scary because what I went to school for is nothing like what it is now. But I love collecting information and telling stories, so I think there'll still be a need for me, I think.
There will still be a need for content providers. It's just how it's going to be delivered. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is definitely. Go ahead, Juan.
Well, a lot of folks, it's funny when I ask people, what do they watch at night or how they get their news. A lot of folks, they watch shows like the Colbert Report and shows like that where it's comical, but they still they talk about the news of the day, but it's not presented in the traditional. This is what's happening now. This is what's going on. There was a murder here, suicide here. It's just being presented in different ways. So I'm not sure what that way is going to be. 10 years ago, I didn't know. MySpace was going to be around. I was going to be on MySpace. I didn't know Facebook was going to start picking up news. I didn't even think Facebook was going to last this long. I thought everyone was going to do Facebook like they did the MySpace, and I didn't think Twitter was going to last this long. So it's scary, and we're talking about what's going to happen in 10 years. I don't know what's going to happen in 2 years, to be honest.
You're right.
So this is definitely an example of that old cliche, just when I thought I had all the answers, life changed all the questions. But it does give us a lot to talk about. So we'll wrap it up. We went over half an hour, and it's been fascinating, and you all were great. Thank you for sharing so much information. And we hope you join us at Social Media Week, and we can further discuss this topic. You can learn more about Social Media Week by going to socialmediaweek.org/Miami/. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Terry. See you all.
Bye.
Bye.